Hey, so I did not raise my fees in private practice. I didn't even add more clients to my caseload. I did not even leave doing one on one therapy, but instead, inside my therapy private practice, I brought in a consistent $350 an hour simply by noticing patterns that my clients were already telling me in our weekly sessions. And so, if this is something that you want to do to increase your revenue without increasing your caseload, then stay tuned. Hey, grateful day, everybody. My name is Dr. TK, licensed clinical psychologist and therapist, business coach, and mentor. And so, if you are new here, I definitely want to say welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. And today comes from actually some social media posts that I've been doing around therapy groups. And I asked a question in my stories a week ago, and I wanted to know if you all would like to get more information around case studies. I also polled individuals that were therapists on YouTube as well. And the item that won was making these posts, these blog posts, these carousel, these reels actually come to life. And so before we get into it, I just want to introduce you to me just in case you were new. I am a licensed clinical psychologist located in Southern California. I have been in private practice a little over 14 years. I have generated well over multi-six-figure years in private practice. Of course, not just doing one-on-one therapy. I've done therapy groups, workshops, trainings, and I've also been a clinical supervisor. And then on top of that, I also opened up a digital product business about 8+ years ago, and I have generated over $2.5 million doing what I love and talking about what we're going to talk about today, which is how can therapists diversify their income streams ethically and not only increasing their caseload. All right. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure that you grab your pen and sheet of paper. And so first things first, why did I choose to diversify my income as a therapist? And so if you're anything like myself, you love mental health services. We all entered into this field for a particular reason. However, at some point, if you give all your time away, it's almost like you did the opposite of the reason as to why you went part-time with your job or you went full-time into private practice. The whole goal that most of us were looking for is time freedom, location freedom, and choice freedom. But sometimes when we go into entrepreneurship, we end up working way more hours than we did at a job. Why? Because we are building out an infrastructure from scratch and we don't realize that until we start. And so I realized very early on in my private practice that I did not just want to stop at one-on-one therapy, and I actually wanted to do groups. And so let me first set the tone because I want to be clear. What I did take work. It did take action. And my setup was different than what it is in 2026. Okay. So I did have a physical private practice space. I was working there typically on Thursday evenings, Friday mornings, and Saturday mornings. I was very limited with my hours because I was still working full time at a juvenile correctional facility. And so I took my time building my practice. And I also, at this point in time, when I added a therapy group, I did have one clinical supervisee. I learned a lot in terms of what it means to become a group practice overnight, depending on your state, the rules and regulations related to having associates. Back then it was called interns. And I wanted to be able to give this associate intern some clients. But one of the fastest ways that I saw how to do that was to also beyond, pulling people from the wait list who wanted to see me, I thought about doing therapy groups, but I really didn't know how to start. Okay. And so one of the things that we started doing, of course, during our clinical supervision, and then for me post session, is I always look at the themes that come up in the session. And as me and the supervisee talked every week, we start noticing the same trend with teenage girls that were battling with anxiety, depression, anger management, communication issues, building healthy relationships with counterparts at school. And all of these things impacted their academics and their social life. So once we start noticing a pattern that she and I were seeing, we asked ourselves, what can be a therapy group that we can do that can make these girls not feel like they're by themselves? Because that was the biggest chief complaint is they feel like they're going through what they're going through at 14, 15, 16 years old by themselves. And so the idea popped up, let's do something around assertiveness, that requires psychoeducation, but I also want them to have room to process what's happening because ultimately I want them to build their confidence. Sometimes when they don't know how to do something, it creates anxiety. Then they get very triggered. It leads to anger outbursts, snappiness with parents, and all the things under oppositional, right, as well. And so I wanted to figure out a way to first pull in, if they desire to do so, our individual clients. So what me and the supervisee agreed to do is we would take this idea back to our clients. And it is not unethical for a client to have a different modality of treatment. You just want to make sure that you have a treatment goal. So we knew that some people were on insurance and we knew that some people were private pay. But first, we just wanted to gather the interests of the client. So we asked them, hey, we're thinking about putting together a group for teenage girls like yourself on Saturday around 9 or 10 o'clock a.m. We'll meet for the full hour, and this is what we're going to be covering. And we also talked to them about this is a shared space. And so every single girl that we took it to said yes. So we also need to talk to the payer, the driver, AKA the parent and or caregiver. So once the girls all said yes, we talked to usually the parents in the lobby or we pull them in the office, but all of them said yes as well. And then for those who were on insurance, we told them we need to double check to one, make sure that your insurance covers group therapy. And then two, we need to find out what the copay is. And something you want to keep in mind is what time of year you offer the group because of PPOs, deductibles, and things like that. So those who were paying private pay, we needed to come up with a average hourly amount that we would charge per the group. Now, what I did is I reverse engineered this. So I said, how much do we want to make per hour, considering what we want to do with the girls, because we want to give them a space to talk, and we don't want too many girls in the group because not everybody's going to have a chance to talk. Then we don't want to have a small amount because we may want to do some activities, role plays, and just some fun stuff. So our magic number landed anywhere from like 7 to 9. 9 is our max, also considering the space. So clearly your rules would be different if you were doing telehealth. And so if you would like me to break this down on how I would do this in this day and age in telehealth, just drop that comment below. But this is pretty much how we had it set up. So once we got the buy-in from the parents and told them the fee structure, then of course, now it's time to validate the idea and put the structure together. So we had to decide what is the actual topic now that they've said yes, and then what is the structure? How many weeks is the group? What does our documentation look like? When are we going to do our notes? What does this mean for them doing individual? We also had to choose a start date. We had to do what's called a launch timeline because we just didn't want to bank on the girls who were in the practice. I also wanted to open it up to the public. Now, because we were in a suite of a lot of offices per se, we were able to create flyers, drop off flyers to other offices that I had built relationships with, or even I used to sublet at, because we know that they had teenagers or parents there that wanted their teenagers to be in group. And so me and the supervisee took turns doing intakes. And then, of course, we determined ethically, should those clients be in individual treatment, group treatment, or both, especially at the onset of treatment. And so if you want to learn what are the group therapy processes that you want to consider when you're building your therapy group, and you want to consider what specific questions you want to ask your current or new therapy clients in addition to your regular intake questions to position them to be successful in a therapy group and to make sure that the therapy group is a right choice, I would highly suggest that you get my therapy group private practice starter kit checklist. This is in the description box. I'll also make sure to pin it at the top of the comments. This just doesn't include the intake questions for groups. It also includes, at minimum, 35 areas that you want to look at, build out for the therapy group process to be ethical, be sound, and be smooth. Okay. So once we figured out the infrastructure, we then took it back to the families. Everyone agreed on a start date. Everyone agreed on the fee, private pay, or insurance. And then we started the group. And so it was a co-facilitated group with me and the supervisee. Now, for business structure purposes, the supervisee could have ran the group on her own for my group practice owners. However, she had never run a group in my private practice. She had ran groups at her job. And we all should know that infrastructure is very different based on where you work. Documentation is different based on where you work. So what we did intentionally is we set up an additional supervision time that was more like a consultation time. And we met 15 minutes before the group started to make sure that we were on the same page prior to the group starting, like what topic we're covering today, what activity we're going to do today, what homework, if any, will they have today. And then we would go and co-lead the group and talk about who's going to introduce or teach that day if there was psychoeducation. And then we also had a debriefing session, which was about 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe in the beginning, it was a little longer. And we talked about making sure that we know who is going to do whose notes. So the easy way that we structured this is if it is your client in the group, it would make more sense for you to do the progress note. If you did the intake and somebody is not in individual therapy, but they're only in the group, which we had 2 girls that came in from the public, then whoever did their intake actually is the one who does their progress note. In terms of treatment plans, something you also want to consider is to choose a treatment plan that works for every single person in the group, but you can personalize it tailored to their individual therapy goal, but maybe there's the social component of the group. So now that we've ran the group for 8 weeks, something magical happened. The girls connected. And one of the things we realized when we would do our debriefing was that this was one of the things that the girls didn't say, but they were lacking in their individual therapy process, which was a support system of people their age. Some of the girls went to the same school, but didn't realize it. Some of them had seen each other in passing, but didn't, never spoke to each other. And so it just created a space for girls to make friends. And that's always great when it comes down to someone tapering down in treatment and graduating from treatment because we know that they have a success plan. They have successfully graduated and they can go on. And so another thing that happened is the girls did not want it to end. So what I will say about groups is you never want to continue a group just because they don't want it to end, because you also want to teach people how to have a good goodbye. That is therapeutic. But there's nothing wrong in entertaining why they wanted to continue. So once we got it all out on the table, what we realized was that, of course, during round 1, it was more focused on, let's just say 60% psychoeducation and teaching and 40% actual implementation activities. They wanted to have another round of the implementation and activities, but do more role plays based on what was happening in current day at school, at home, etc., because also they had trusted each other. So we said that actually is a good reason to do another group. Now, what we did choose to do is not have a open group. We didn't enroll any new people because they had already built a relationship, and this would be process-based. Now, that was our choice. So we just chose another date. We made sure that all the girls could attend. We checked in with the parents and caregivers. Everybody was on board. So we did like a 2 to 3 week break, and then we came back to the table on Saturdays. Now, what I chose to do, because I know that the supervisee can do the processing as long as in our supervision hour, we talk about what is going to be the structure of the activities. So she actually took on by herself the second round of the group. But the beauty part is the treatment planning and the documentation, all of that had been structured. The girls are used to understanding when the group starts, when it ends. They all understood confidentiality. They were all a great fit for the therapy group. And so the groups went so good that at the end of those 2 rounds, now we're looking at 16 weeks altogether, which is about 4 to 5 months. We now have a system that is rinse and repeatable, whether we choose to do a psychoeducation / process group and or one psychoeducation and then one process group, and maybe people go through 2 phases. We can now change the topic, maybe change the curriculum, but the systems are on rinse and repeat. And that's exactly what we were able to do with teenage groups, with people who were going to college groups, with little kids groups, with adult groups. And so it's very awesome when you can create a system, document it, and then rinse and repeat it, and then just simply fix the tweaks. And so that's how I was able to position myself, not to lock myself only into doing one-on-one therapy, but to leverage my time in the beginning, front load my time, front load expenses if I need to do something different. Let's just say if you're doing telehealth, you may have to pay for the platform who's going to be able to allow you to have all those people on the telehealth platform to do therapy. But the back office processes does not change. So again, if this is something that piques your interest and you love mental health services, but you don't necessarily want to have a therapy session go on until like a question mark. You don't know how long therapy is going to last because let's be all the way real. Some people come into therapy for one reason, and then when they get to know you, they feel comfortable, which they should. And then they start opening up more. And then you realize that 3 months of treatment was not short form therapy. And now it turns into a year, 2 years, 3 years. So if you want to leverage your time, you can do therapy groups and you can start from what you already have. And again, you can apply exactly what we talked about today for telehealth. All right. So if you love this video and you like content like this, please make sure to subscribe, come back, click that like button so that I can know that you enjoyed this video. And also comment below if you could start a therapy group right now, what would be the topic? Just drop the topic down just so that we can get some ideas going. And also, if you are ready to look into what it takes for you to actually start a therapy group, the processes, my checklist, my intake questions, in addition to the intake that you already do for individual clients, then make sure to check out that therapy group starter kit checklist in the description box. And again, I will pin it to the top of the comments. All right, y'all, have a great day, and I will talk to you in the next case study. Bye.